And we are live. Yes, here we go. Yes, welcome to Jack Kelly, Happy at Work, the Future of Work, with our special guest today, ace recruiter, top recruiter, actually, chief recruiter officer, right? Chief recruiter officer. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. Richard Cho. So welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thanks for having me, Jack. I'm really glad to be here.
Hey, the first thing, just to jump into it, to really give a shout out to recruiters, and I'm a fellow recruiter, Chief Recruit Officer, that's new, right? Can you talk about it? Like, is this a growing thing? Is this unique?
Yeah, I think this title has been used in just, let's call it a handful of different companies out there. But really, this is a new trend that companies are starting to invest more in strategic recruiting. And so the best way to do that is to ensure that recruiting has a seat at the table, especially at the C-suite. And that's something that I think is necessary given the monumental shifts in what we're hearing from the talent in the market. And there's a lot of different reasons for this, but ultimately it's boils down to companies are absolutely saying that recruiting, it will forever be strategic, and we need someone at the helm that is also at the table.
Now, do you think this is more of a tech thing because it's been so hot, from the pandemic onwards? I mean, obviously it's been hot before that, but really it seemed to just boom. Are you seeing it in other sectors as well?
Yeah, so it's mostly, from my viewpoint, it's mostly been a tech trend. However, I actually believe that having someone in the C-suite within recruiting should be a trend across all industries. The main reason for that is every company is dealing with a really difficult talent acquisition challenge, whether they're a startup, a tech startup, or a 100-year established company. If we think about some of those 100-year brands that have been around forever, many of these companies are thinking about how do we attract a new wave of talent? That now talent is transient, given this trend that we're seeing in remote hybrid or remote workers, driven by all the things that we saw during the pandemic. Companies that are 100-year brands need to think about really reshifting and becoming a lot more strategic about how to engage that particular talent, which involves the participation of the executive suite. It's no longer just a, hey, head of recruiting, go figure out how to do this remote thing. It now has business implications around real estate, around brand. It weaves into the corporate marketing strategy. CMOs and CROs now, and CRR being the recruiting officer, should be collaborating with each other around how can you take some of the best things about that company's brand and shift it into a talent brand story. And that should be a seamless transaction, not a goes to a CHRO that then goes to a VP of HR that goes to a head of recruiting. This is a trend that I actually believe companies, especially now in a down economy, needs to think about.
It's really easy. So to take a step back, because I jumped into it because I was so excited to hear about a chief recruiting officer, because until just very recently, I've never heard of that C-suite title. And as a recruiter, I'm glad to see that we're getting a seat at the table, which is fantastic. So, but I didn't properly introduce you, so that Richard is currently chief recruiting officer at Uncut Gems. No, it's just Gems, right? So, yeah. For people who are not aware of it, Christine, do you want to maybe share what, even though it's Gems, right? Gem is but out. I can't believe you don't hear people say that, Uncut Gems.
I love that movie, by the way.
Yeah. So it's a good movie. And then for people who watch you who are on TikTok, it's like a big TikTok meme for a while. So, but I guess you guys are too busy recruiting, so you aren't paying attention.
That's
Like
right.
just so it shows that you're really recruiting hard and not scrolling through social media and TikTok. So that's good. That's good.
That's
Uh,
right.
and before you were at Robinhood, and you went from what, like 40 people, 400 people to like 1 million people you hired?
Yeah, yeah. It was just under 400 to just over 4,000 in that period of time. So
So before we go to Uncut Gems, could we go to just how was it like at Robinhood going to a place where it was a decent amount of people to start with, but exponential growth?
yeah.
How did you do that? Like, how big of a recruiting team did you have? Did you get any sleep? Like, how did it all play out?
Look, a lot of that is on the backs of amazing recruiting professionals. That's actually an interesting place to start. When I started in April 2019, there were 14 people in all of recruiting. And in previous years, they were responsible for, let's call it just under 200 hires. That first year, that first year, we were focused really on establishing a foundation, ensuring that we created, things that are necessary for scale, like recruiting capacity, reorganizing the organization so that you can have recruiting specialists that are deeply knowledgeable and passionate about the talent verticals in which they're supporting, and then instrument all the data so that we can respond to the market. What I underappreciated was, even though Robinhood had a very popular brand as a hot unicorn startup, the talent brand was directly tied to the product brand, and there'd been some bumps in the road along the way, and bumps in the road around the product brand while I was there, so we had to invest heavily on creating a true talent brand that is authentic to the culture of the company. And Robinhood had that in spades. We just needed to figure out a way to market that. Fast forward, year one that I was there, we hired over 400 people. Year two, 1,000 people. In year three, 2,500 people. So every year, the output more than doubled in my period of time there. And recruiting started from 14 people to 310 if you include all of the people, both full-time,
Wow.
RPO, contractors, that all contributed to hiring that amount of Robin hoodies. So it was a phenomenal ride, one that in my personal career has been the fastest growth in my time there, and I learned a lot along the way. So it was a fun ride.
So how do you do? So you start the first year or so, startup, not as well known, getting buzz, and so it's kind of manageable. But then as time goes on and you hit the stride where all of a sudden there's Wall Street bets, the meme stocks, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, all this kind of stuff. So that whole, sector, everybody was at home, it seemed like everybody was at home day trading.
Yeah.
And Robinhood was like the go-to place, particularly it seemed for like Gen Zs and millennials. And it just caught fire, right? And so now you're tasked with heading it all up, and then you have to figure out, all right, what do we do? So we have to have the branding, but then the branding, I think you kind of politely alluded to, you had some challenges that came up that I guess had to deal with, where it makes it a little harder to recruit.
Yeah.
When you have that, or worried about paying for order flow and all that kind of stuff, and then when it looked like they weren't in net capital accordance with the regulators, so you had to kind of really ride through some storms. Like, how did you, as a head, heading up recruiting, how to deal with candidates who are like, wait a minute, are you gonna, is Robert gonna have enough money to survive? If I put my money there, is it safe? If I leave my current job and go there, am I gonna be in trouble? Was that a big?
Yeah, and I think you articulated the context pretty well. And look, this is actually a phenomenon that happens at almost every company. I think every TA leader will resonate with this particular statement, which is anytime the company is going through some sort of PR crises, or even, by the way, even during times where PR is great for that particular company, what TA leaders are struggling with is trying to tell the authentic story about how the company and its people are rally around that success or problem. In the examples that you shared, yeah, there were a lot of implications to how candidates might perceive future of that particular company. And so we spent a lot of time investing in the message, teaching our recruiters and sourcers really the mechanics of what is PFOF, why is that important, how can we tell an authentic story that talks about this company's success that separates from the impression that readers are getting from PR. So that's something I'm particularly proud of, especially with the team. I shouldn't take credit because it required having someone who led talent brands come up with we call it internally, crisis response or crisis response for recruiting. But the thing that I think was really important is that we were able to do that real time, as quickly as most companies have some sort of PR crisis response. We had a similar structure for recruiting, worked hand in glove with our marketing teams. And we were able to continue to drive positive results because we were able to address those particular topics direct and in an authentic way. So that's a lot of TA leaders think about that. If you haven't built this crisis response type function, I highly recommend it, especially again now in this economy, in the PR news that we're hearing today.
Yeah, because I'd imagine it takes a lot of work, because if you have a dispirited recruiting talent acquisition team that, and it's, we're all humans. So you read the headlines and, you hear challenges, and then it's hard when they speak into candidates and they're saying, what about this? What about that? What about the other thing, to really stay on message and make the candidate feel comfortable why they should select Robinhood instead of, and because now there are just so many fintech companies, so many startups, and then you have all the legacy big investment banks and hedge funds and private equity. So there's a lot to choose from. So you have to really, I imagine, put a lot of time and effort and work and hand-holding to your team to get their morale up and to keep it motivated and have that messaging.
Yeah, Jack, you hit the nail right on the head. The head fake here, as much as that we created a process to be able to address the market concerns from a product or even company brand perspective. The main driver for having a structure like that is to keep your team motivated. Recruiters are humans, sources are humans, coordinators are humans. If they don't believe in the
I think a lot of people don't think recruiters are human, by the way. So I think a lot of job seekers will disagree.
Yeah, we think we're like machines in the background.
I don't know what they think. We're just horrible used car salespeople, real real estate sales folks.
I really
not to disparage those, but yeah,
I really want to shift that perception to be honest. But with these recruiting professionals, obviously they're humans and they want to really believe in the company in which they're pitching to candidates. And if you don't if you don't focus on that, you start to see lower retention, not only in recruiting, but also lower pass-through rates, because these recruiting professionals are just not bought into the message. And so, well stated, Jack. I totally agree with that.
Now, how does it get chaotic? And I know you have to be diplomatic about it, but does it get chaotic when you're hiring 2,000 people in 1 year, and still a small-ish startup company? Is it like, and I don't know, was it all remote at the time, or is it
It was 100%. Yeah.
So it's 100% remote. Does it just how do you keep it from going off the rails and make sure everybody gets onboarded and that they have their benefits and they have the right salary? I mean, just the logistics alone seem to me like a nightmare, where you have 2,000 people coming on in a year and making it work during a pandemic.
Yeah. The short answer is that it wasn't all on my shoulders, which is thank goodness, right? I had some amazing peers across the rest of the people organization that were able to respond to this new norm. And guess what? We weren't the only company that had to deal with this. 2,000 is either a big number or a really small number, depending on what company you're a part of. And there are a lot of HR professionals that really made that period of time really special, especially given that no one in history, as old as I am, I've never been through a pandemic before.
You weren't around during the Spanish or bubonic plague, or no?
No, I was not around in 1904. Just born right after that. But this is something that I think we did very well, but a lot of companies did very well during that time.
I profiled in a Forbes piece Lynn Oldham from Zoom, and it's so interesting because what I was equally confused, how did you do all this? Same kind of thing I was asking you. And she had similar answers. I guess if you're an experienced talent acquisition, recruitment, recruiter executive, you kind of know, all right, here's what we have to do. Let's just go back to basics and get things done. Because I expected a wild story. It's Zoom, for goodness sakes. I figured, oh my God, that has to be crazy. What happened? But it seemed pretty controlled. And in fact, what she was saying, a lot of it was kind of fun because you had the chance, because it was all remote, to just reimagine everything and reinvent everything and think differently instead of just doing the same old thing. So I guess the same with you, where, okay, hey, this is wild times, but you know what? Just let's go back to basics and do what we have to do, and it'll work. And it seems like it did.
Yeah, I agree. One thing, not to make this all Robinhood, but I want to shift back to how this might actually impact talent acquisition trends. One thing that I'm starting to see in the market is this very strong opposing opinion around gathering in person. Should that be a company policy? Should that not be a company policy? A lot of TA leaders are concerned about, if that particular company doesn't offer remote first, does that make them less competitive? But to what you're saying earlier, what I'll say is that for almost 18 months, we were forced to be in a remote environment. Many of us were explicitly quarantined or stay at home with stay-at-home orders of various states. And so we all endured as humans to be able to just operate behind these screens, right? Yeah. I still don't know how to unmute myself, by the way, on Zoom, but I'll figure that out eventually. But when we started to come back and gather as humans, I think there was something just special about gathering together in person, and that bond that was just hard to artificially recreate. So because of that phenomenon, I think a lot of companies are starting to revisit, is their remote first policy the right thing? Or is remote hybrid the right decision? And that's going to be something that's going to be very difficult for talent acquisition leaders to figure out. But here's to go back to tie in the CRO point. it's also the hardest thing for the C-suite to have to figure out. And a talent acquisition leader should be able to facilitate that conversation to talk about the trade-offs around setting up the company's brands, the logistics, how to create a virtual organization in an organization that also has brick and mortar locations. So that's a complex conversation, which requires a seat at the table at the C-suite.
In GEM, how is it? Is it remote, hybrid? How is the work model there?
Yeah, we're currently remote until next year, which gives us runway during this build phase to really have this conversation, debate, negotiation, whatever that might, whatever word you want to use there, because the leaders at GEM really want to be thoughtful about this, because we've got a pretty special culture that we want to protect at all costs. So if I were to give like the real world picture of what's happening at GEM, I'd say there's some percentage of us that are, gathering all within legal limits and local, state, and federal rules, and working together. And there's a lot of, energy behind that. So some are in office, but many of us are not. And we're also figuring out how to work collaboratively together in a virtual environment. The thing that the C-suite is listening for is, how is that supportive of our values? How is it supportive of our culture? And that's something that our founders especially are being really thoughtful about making that particular decision.
And how does it? Because you're fast growing as well. Venture capital backed. Fast growth. When you're searching for candidates, what's the temperature? Are they basically saying, hey, I rather be in the office, I want hybrid, I remote? What's the vibe check?
Today, I believe it's probably close to 50-50. It's an unsatisfactory answer.
50-50 what, like half want remote, half want hybrid? Or
yeah, there are, believe it or not, there are some candidates that do prefer to be in office. They tend to be earlier in their career, and what they're optimizing for is to truly build real community. Like imagine, remember when first coming out of college, going into the workspace, especially if you're working away from home. You want to be able to create those social connections that really bind you to that location, to that company. As much as we are trying to create that in a virtual environment, I think it's just harder to do. There's something about truly breaking bread in person that creates that bond. Now, you fast forward and you go into folks like myself that are old dogs in this industry. I think we've been able to create a work style that really lends itself well to a remote environment, and to be able to create work-life integration, having the optionality for me to just roll out of bed, put on a shirt. You guys don't know what I'm wearing underneath this, but like put on a shirt, comb my hair, and jump right into a meeting, as opposed to sitting an hour and a half in traffic, is such a strong value proposition for me. So I would say that anecdotally, the candidate response is somewhere in the middle, at 50-50. And we'll get, as we get more into the data, I'll have a much stronger position.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. For younger people, I would encourage people who are just graduating, university, or maybe out for a year or two, to definitely go into the office if they afford that opportunity, because of exactly what you're saying. Because this way you got to get a vibe, you get a feel for it, what it's like. Maybe you get a mentor, and then also a lot of people. Hey, you went to college is a certain place, you kind of maybe lost touch with people who are no longer within your geographic region. So you want to kind of rebuild a whole new network too. So getting into the office and meeting people, I agree. I think that's really important. So I, for different people in different times of their life. And I also could imagine for, let's say, baby boomers, they're like, all right, I don't want to do this commute anymore. And I've been doing this for 40 years. I'd rather be home. I get that. I respect that. That's a very valid opinion. Hey, why schlep into the office, right in from a suburb to go into San Francisco or to New York City when you could do it from home? So, I can understand that. So it's now with GEM, can you maybe walk through people what you do, what the company does, what they're all about?
Yeah. So GEM, we are a B2B SaaS company that supports recruiters and sourcers as a, let's call it a candidate relational management database. So CRM for short. The primary feature that actually has created a fanatical following of our products, and I'll attest to this as a former head of recruiting at Robinhood. My sourcers absolutely love GEM at Robinhood. The primary feature that really put us on the map was our ability to be able to increase engagement, and that is done really through our ability to create and automate an engagement flow that is more personalized, that is more catered or bespoke to the particular candidate. And as a result, we see a 5x return on positive engagements compared to the traditional outreach. And the reason why recruiters and sourcers have had such a positive reaction to this is it starts to create the time and space for recruiters and sourcers to really focus on the thing that they care about the most, which is develop a trust and bond with the candidate, so that they can become that trusted advisor through the interview process, which is sorely missing in today's recruiting environment. Back when you and I started in the industry, I'm old, but by the way, you said something about baby boomers. I'm not a baby boomer generation. Just
nor am I. Yeah,
I don't think you are either.
Although I did, when I first started recruiting, I would come into the city, right? Well, I lived in the city at the time, but then you had 2 kids and you kind of go to the suburbs, that usual thing. And I would have to race it. This is going to age me now, right? Don't mock me. So I would race in, because if I didn't get there early on a Monday morning, the fax machine with resumes would spill over. And then, I kid you not, Richard, then I would have to kind of play this game and put because sometimes a resume with 2, back in the day, it could even be 3 pages or so. And then I have to kind of figure out, where does it go?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
What a difference, right?
Yeah. We could trade some war stories. Speaking of this fax machine, I don't know if you remember the thermo paper fax machines, where early on in the agency that I worked at, we were just starting and didn't have a lot of money. So you would print out these things in thermal paper, and I'm taking it to clients. And if you leave it out in the sun too long, it turns black. And they're like, I promise you, Jack, this is a great candidate. You can't read it right now. I will send you.
It's so wild. It's so wild how it changes. And so but for the people who are watching, particularly on LinkedIn, when they hear applicant tracking systems, when they hear, there's so much misconception at times. There's a lot of people who feel, rightly or wrongly, feel that, hey, it's kind of rigged against me. If I don't have the right keywords, if I don't have the right bullet points, I'm just going to get kicked out. So with GEM, how, for people, not who aren't kind of really super knowledgeable about recruiting and the inner workings of it, but just if you're a job seeker on the hunt and you're sending in a resume, or if you're a recruiter and using GEM, so how is it marketed? How is it very different than other things that are out there? And I know you started talking about it, but a little bit more, how that works.
Yeah, at the onset, the product does a good job creating connections to the things that that candidate in the company has in common, whether it's people, whether it's former companies that work together, and so on and so forth. So it already starts from a place of trust. But the thing that's really important is what GEM facilitates is a longer term engagement. We call it nurturing the candidate, and this is something that I remember when I first started in industry that was really important. I would take, hey, no, I'm not looking for a job right now, as a, okay, great, let's keep in touch. That was always the approach, in an authentic way, not in a, you had said earlier, sometimes recruiters are not deemed human, that they're salespeople. But if I've established that trust with that particular candidate, the keep in touch was actually a enjoyable experience, where I could share with them progress of the companies as the companies progress through their growth period. You're able to share in a meaningful way where they might not be interested right now, but 6 months from now, a year from now, they may be interested. And all along the way, you've developed the trust and credibility with that particular candidate, that you're able to have a much higher rate of being able to close them, right? And so as a result, I think it's the engagement through nurture, which impacts your ability to be able to deliver that candidate into the job that they love, that the candidate, the careers that they're passionate about.
So instead of where I would in the past, let's say you were a candidate and I call you up for a particular role and you think, hey, thanks, but no thanks. I'm like, okay, we'll stay in touch. And then every once in a while, I might give you a buzz, particularly if there's another role that seems to be a fit.
Yeah.
But I guess with GEM, is it more automated and more tailored, so that rather than have people, because another change, you probably see this too, people aren't as inclined to get on the phone as someone like you or me who just grew up doing that. We were comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And you have to respect how people want to be contacted.
Yeah.
So I guess it's more of what, sending a message to someone, sending an email, sending a text. How does that do to kind of keep that connection without overwhelming the person?
Yeah, I think the communication aspects of it are the simplest parts. That's what gives recruiters and sourcers the trust that the message is reaching the candidates. We also do some significant analytics around, did they open the email? Did they click on the links that were sent? And so on and so forth. I think that's secondary to what the primary goal is, which is, and maybe the best way to share this is, share an anecdote. But I remember before tools like GEM, and actually this was even before LinkedIn Recruiter really became a real thing. And I recall, and this is not back in dinosaur days. This is like probably 2010, 2011, where I was tasked with bringing in a product manager to support a mobile engineering initiative at Facebook long time ago. And the focus area was to bring in someone who's experienced with Android. And back in 2009, 2010, Android was very nascent, and there was not that many people in the world that can actually do the job. And I engaged someone at Google that worked in Andy Rubin's organization. And it took me a better part of a year to keep engaged with him. We would have coffees. We would meet for lunch. I would get to know him even better around what his career aspirations were, and where he vacationed. Like, we really developed a bond along the way. And then 14 months later, he accepted a job at Facebook, and he's, by the way, still there, leading some hardware initiatives there. The moral of that story is I was able to focus on really nurturing and that relationship over time. What is not seen is I had to create a calendar tickler. I'd have lunch and I would, put that in Outlook. I'd have to update the applicant tracking system. I'd have to send an email to the hiring manager saying what I did. And just like there was like 4 or 5 different systems that I had to go in and out of in order to keep things coordinated. And the value proposition for GEM is that we are the single platform that allows all those activities to happen using various tools. And it happens seamlessly in the background so that I can have the time and space to focus on nurturing and developing a relationship with the candidate. And that, I promise you, is the magic behind this, right? So this is a reason why, like, I joined GEM, because I thought that talent acquisition in the 90s, we were forced to really focus on the candidate, and the onus was on us to pitch the value proposition of the company to that particular candidate. In a highly transactional environment, the onus is on the candidate to figure out how to get into the company, to get visibility. This is a reason why we're probably deemed as robots, and then when we're trying to close the candidate, we have no relationship with them, so no wonder they think we're salesmen. So what GEM is really facilitating is that sort of move back into treating candidates as humans, as professionals as they are. Allow recruiters and sourcers to have the time and space to focus on that and not worry about, I need to put in a tickler in my calendar, I need to do this here, I need to send an email, I need to update the ATS. That's just too many steps. And GEM allows that to happen seamlessly.
And for the other side of the equation, for the people here who are considering a job search or currently in a job search, do you have any advice what to put, what not to put, or should you not even worry about how your resume is going to go into a system like GEM or another applicant tracking system to get noticed? Is it any advice, or just put down what you do? What would you say to folks who are just stressed out about this?
Yeah, look, there's no fancy algorithm. Keywords do matter in surfacing a resume, but ultimately, it's that conversation that you have with the recruiter that's going to matter the most. So to triple down on what I said about the relationship-based recruiting, if you have an opportunity to speak to a recruiter, take that opportunity. Because of the reputation that recruiting has made over the last decade or so, many candidates do not believe that recruiters actually can affect the hire, or can help shepherd them into a way to get a job at their dream jobs. But I would say to you that we have a set of recruiting professionals that do really care about that approach, and you should just get to know them. You should be interviewing them, quote unquote, dating them as much as you're interviewing the company itself. And if they're great ambassadors of the company, or if they're an agency that that they have your best interests in mind, that's going to be one of the best relationships that you'll invest in the long term, because that person is going to be personally invested in you and your career, right? So what's in the resume is, I'd say it's important, but it's probably weighted at 30% importance. But that relationship with the recruiter is probably more important in that equation.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Richard, because I think what happens, the frustration at times, is that people who are looking for a job really don't know how recruiters work. So that, to your point, what I always suggest to people is that if you're looking, you want to find a recruiter who specializes in your sector. So let's say, you've worked in the tech sector. I've placed people primarily on Wall Street. So if, let's say, somebody came to me and said, "Hey, Jack, I'm a Java programmer. Can you help me have a job?" I would say, honestly, I can't, because I just don't know. I couldn't help you. But then I could come across looking like a jerk and they're going to tell their friends, that guy, Jack, he's such a jerk, he blew me off.
Yeah.
But because they don't understand, and that's probably more of our industry not really explaining it enough to people. And this is why I was glad you have the podcast. I was thinking of, like we were talking before the show, maybe doing more of these, because there is that disconnect that leads to frustration, because then you feel, hey, why did I get blown up? Because I don't have an ego, so I'm comfortable saying, hey, I don't know that space and I can't help. I would love to do it, trust me, because it was such a hot area. I would make way more money, but I don't know it. And to start from scratch is really whatever. But I think a lot of recruiters don't say that. So they give like short shrift to somebody, and then they feel like, wow, that was rude. And now, you know how it is, one bad apple or just one bad interaction, and you label the whole group. And yeah, so I think just letting people, if you're looking for people who watch this now, if you're looking, tell me if you agree with this, Richard. If you're looking for a job, you want to find a recruiter who knows your space, who understands the space, but then also you want to be at the level, because they may just place C-suite people. And if you're not at that level, once again, you feel left out. So you want to find person within your sector, and then who within the type of role you do, the title, the compensation range, because it does all professions, if you think about it now, is so highly specialized. It's not like it used to be when you were younger and you have a doctor who did everything. Now you go to a doctor for whatever little thing is, there's a doctor who does that.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, a lawyer, every little thing, they just specialize in it. Same thing, recruiters, not all of them, but I think a lot of it, in my opinion, I think for people who are watching this, some of the better recruiters, and this is a complete generalization, are the ones who really know one area, know it really well, because then they know the companies, they know the people, they know the customs, they know the culture, they know how much they get paid, they know the inside scoops, they know the hiring managers, so they could usher you in, you know, much more effectively than if you have no clue.
Yeah.
Is that right? Does that resonate?
I mean, look, you articulated it perfectly. I think I mentioned one part of my playbooks when I'm thinking about scaling a recruiting organization at a hypergrowth company, and we're doing that here today at GEM, is to put the recruiting professionals that have passion for that particular space in the talent verticals that they care about. So engineering recruiters and sourcers, and even the coordinators have a lot of passion about engineering. That, by the way, that was my story. I'm an engineer that decided I didn't want to be an engineer as a profession, and I went into recruiting.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be an engineer or to do well.
It's not the usual path, right? There's actually, I should introduce you to this guy, and I'm embarrassed, I'm spacing out his name, Scott. Christine will probably remember. He's at Indeed, head of talent acquisition, but started out as an engineer, software engineer. And somewhere along the line, he's like, hey, I just want to do something different, and moved into recruiting. But that I don't hear that often.
Yeah, that's right. But you do hear pretty commonly that folks that were in sales that decided to focus on sales recruiting, or
yes, that makes sense.
Finance, focus on finance recruiting, and lawyers too, by the way.
Yes, yeah, that's big.
So I made this decision much earlier in my career. I was not, outside of a couple of internships, I was not, and nor should companies ask me to do real engineering, because I think I was at subpar or below engineer. But the reason why I would humbly say that I was halfway decent recruiter is because of my passion, like my voracious appetite for understanding knowledge, and going from back in the day, tech stack that worked in 1998 to the new tech stack is something that I cared a lot about, which made me, and these are the 3 points that are important for the candidates to hear, it made me credible to the market, to the candidate, because I'm able to suss good, great, or not so great candidates. It made me credible to the company and my hiring managers. This is really important to note, because when you are interviewing recruiters and developing a relationship with the recruiter, that recruiter needs to reciprocate their ability to be able to place you in your dream job by understanding what you do. You'd mentioned you have experience in the network within Wall Street. If I wanted to shift to that profession, I would want to sit down with you. You probably would say, no, you have no chance in hell. But like, I would want to sit down with you to understand, how do I best prepare myself for a role in Wall Street? But if they would want a job in technology, they should probably want to sit with me, because I have the credibility both in market and with my hiring managers. And the third thing is, because of that credibility, I'm developing a network. I understand the market trends. I understand, what the implications are going to be, especially what we're seeing. You said Wall Street, so it triggered it. And top of mind is this economy, this economy shift and a lot of concern in the stock market. But like, this is the time where you want to really invest in the relationship with the recruiter that understands your space.
I agree with you. I think it makes so much sense that being an engineer, even if you decided to kind of pivot, you kind of understand it, you get it, you understand that mindset, the people who are in the field. So it does give you more credibility, gives you more confidence. It makes, the conversation flow easier because it's not alien to you. So that's important. And here, this is where the interesting turn comes, is that if we had this conversation 2 weeks ago, I would have been saying, wow, everything I hear, it's just so hard to find tech talent. It seems brutal. Like in general, it's a war for talent. It's a hot job market, great resignation, 4 million people quitting a month.
Yeah.
And hard to tech. It's like just so hard. But now with NASDAQ in kind of bear market territory, probably S&P. I haven't looked at it today. I'm scared to look at it because I'm hemorrhaging money, Richard. So they're probably in bear market territory now. Cryptos are really getting beaten up. What do you think? And I know for the audience, you're probably not going to want to hear this. What a great way to set it up, right? So everyone's going to click out now. So do you think this will turn around quickly, or would you advise people to have the mindset that we're going to be in choppy waters and it may not be as hot in the foreseeable future as it was? What do you think? What's your take on it?
So look, this is one of the few advantages of me being as old as I am.
Wait, you are not old though, by the way. So stop it. Because look, you don't have the white beard. So you're making me feel really.
You look distinguished. I just look old. Look, both you and I probably lived through 4 real recessions.
Yeah, we got the .com boom and bust, right? 9/11 in the aftermath, financial crisis.
Yeah. Even before that. So like the true recessions that are happened just specifically in the U.S. And there was one that impacted Silicon Valley, the Bay Area technology in 1998 that was actually caused by an Asian market crisis, Asian economy crisis. What I'll say is that I've, in my profession, have lived through 2.5, because like the Asian economy, I will say that it wasn't in a U.S. recession, but it impacted technology in a way that was felt. So the three that I was actually in my profession was the Asian crisis, the .com bubble burst, and then the subprime mortgage issue. And those were like 1998, 2000, and 2008 respectively. And in each one of those, I saw a significant shift to layoffs, hiring freeze, hiring cutbacks, and 100% of the time, the economy snapped back. And not only did it snap back for us, for recruiting, it was, hey, we're gonna freeze. We probably have to lay off some recruiters to make this happen. Luckily, in those scenarios, I was in a role where I was not impacted. Certainly had a lot of survivor's remorse, but being on the inside, you felt this kind of this massive like shift from we're not going to hire to all of a sudden shift back to like we're behind now because we've cut back hiring, we cut back our resources, we cut back recruiters, we cut back all these things, and now we're behind. Sprint as fast as you can to catch us back up, right? So my advice, I have advice to three archetypes, and I'm actually writing in the process of writing a blog post about this for recruiters, for recruiting professionals out there, recruiters, sourcers, coordinators. If this is the career that you're most passionate about, I highly encourage you to stick it out. It's going to snap back. Back in 1998, the running joke was everyone that was in recruiting, I was sort of just making the transition from agency into in-house at the time. Many recruiters shifted to becoming mortgage brokers and real estate agents, which is kind of interesting because then later the subprime mortgage lending forced a lot of those recruiters to rethink a career back into recruiting. But anyways, I digress. Those that stuck it out were able to do things that were adjunct to recruiting at companies. That's what I did. I was a stock plan administrator. I was a comp analyst. I did ISO 9001, 2000 certification. That allowed me to become even better a recruiting professional as a result of this, because I had more exposure to the company as a result of that. But if this is your passion, stick it out, because this is going to snap back, and it'll snap back, in an aggressive way. If a history is an indicator of the future, I've been through 3 of them, and the thing that I cannot predict is how long this period is going to be, but I will absolutely predict that every company in those three scenarios had to snap back hiring really aggressively. The second is really to the TA leaders. Today, you have an opportunity and an obligation. The opportunity is you now have time and space to do the things that you've always wanted to do. The obligation is you need to now invest in the force that you have today to up-level their skills, to increase efficiency in your hiring process, to instrument all the data that you said that, man, if we had time, we would totally, have data for that. Well, now you have a little more time and space, and people that are eager to learn and want to contribute to those projects, engaged on those particular projects. So this is really the call to action during this period of time. And it also allows you to increase morale at the company, especially for talent acquisition professionals that are really worried, when is the next shoe dropping? And the third is to the executives. Think about making sure that you're prepared for when the company endures this period of time and you're back into growth phase. The amount of time that it's going to take you to rebuild the flywheel of hiring really is contingent on how deeply you cut into that particular, the recruiting organization. So think about alternate ways to leverage really smart and high potential and eager to learn individuals into other parts of the organization that allow them to be even better recruiting professionals for your organization. And so, and again, this is something that hopefully this message will resonate with a lot of folks. But hang in there, this will turn around.
And I imagine, Richard, the same advice will hold true for people who are not recruiters, who are either on the job market or just at a company, and they're like, they turn on CNBC and they see the big red, how like the media really makes it even worse. Like, oh my God, plunging, markets plunging. Right. So I agree with you. It's easier said than done, but you have to have the stomach to say, you know what, this too shall pass. It's going to be rough going. I would suggest for people, and tell me what you think too, is this is time you want to make yourself really valuable to the company. You're really useful, so that if there may be some hiring freezes or downsizing, you don't want to be the one. So you want to really make sure you're doing your job, you're executing well, and all that. But it doesn't hurt to probably keep an eye out and maybe have, and this is a shameless plug for recruiters, maybe reach out to your trusted recruiters to say, hey, Rich, Jack, keep an eye out, God forbid, just in case something happens, I don't have to start from square one. Because that's always hard to do. So to have things going, working out. So and I'm glad you brought it up. We're talking about it because I think part of the job for recruiters is to manage expectations.
Yeah.
And I think what happens, recruiters in any professional get a bad rap if all they do is say everything is great. Oh, everything is great. Don't worry, everything is
Yeah.
fine. But sometimes you have to be the one, you have to be the mom or dad to say, all right, not everything is great. We're confident we'll get through it, but here's what you have to be prepared for. You have to be prepared when the stock market really gets pummeled and everyone gets scared and inflation is high. It's very easy for companies and executives to just slow things down.
Right.
And after having, coming out of the pandemic, when all of a sudden everything started looking great, it's kind of sucks that now we have to deal with something again. That's what it is. So it's just hunkering down, getting through it,
Yeah.
and then waiting out till it turns around.
Yeah, look, I think we experience a mini version of what we're going through during the pandemic, right? Like people forget there's a period about 4 to 6 months where we thought imminently the pandemic was going to move us into a recession. A lot of companies stopped hiring or reduced hiring significantly, unless they were one of the few companies that actually increased their user base during the pandemic. On the other, the folks that were negatively impacted were in a state of panic. But after four months, it snapped back, right? So that. But back to the candidates, to the non-recruiters.
Right.
Those of you, to Jack's point, those of you that have not been impacted, absolutely make yourself invaluable. There are ways for you to develop skills that you now never had the opportunity to do so because there are either less people to do it, or that company decided to no longer hire for a particular person that specializes in that thing. So take this opportunity to add that to your knowledge toolkit. To those of you that are considering jobs elsewhere or looking for jobs elsewhere, one of the things that I've seen happen incorrectly during this period of time is the risk appetite drops. All of a sudden, in a down economy, the FANG companies start to see an uptick of people that are interested in joining because they perceive that company to be more stable in a down economy. And so the appetite for startups or mid-sized companies start to drop. And I would encourage you to think about this. I just got done telling people that were not impacted to absorb as much knowledge as they can to put in their toolkit. Well, these companies, these small, medium businesses, and a shameless plug for GEM, we are also hiring aggressively as well. What that means is you will now have an opportunity to join an organization in an environment where there's less people around you. So that ability to be able to absorb more knowledge is actually more prevalent in small, medium businesses, startups than they are in large organizations. As a general rule, I don't want to disparage larger organizations, but this is the reason why you should be careful. Make sure you look at the business metrics of that particular company, but it shouldn't reduce your appetite for risk, because actually this is the time where your skills elevate the most. I've personally seen it, and I've seen it in other engineers, other business professionals, go-to-market professionals. We did the bulk of our hiring at Facebook during a down economy, right in the middle of the subprime mortgage recession or subprime lending recession. And many of those folks that joined Facebook at the time are now in really big roles because they had an outsized scope of work that allowed them to develop those skills. So don't be shy about joining smaller companies.
I love that. That's great, kind of like contrarian advice. It'd be the same thing like for people who are investing in the market or have a 401k and say, hey, maybe, all right, I'll buy while it's low. Hold, it's going to be a little tough, but let me do it. This is a good time, perhaps to do it. Same thing with a career. Say, hey, maybe I go to that smaller startup, that where maybe people aren't rushing in to go there. So I could maybe get more visibility and have a better shot of getting a job there. So that's really sage advice. And For Jem, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? How can they reach you?
Look, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I pretty much accept everyone's invitation. It's the reason why there's so many connections there. And I encourage us to, find some time to chat. This is one of the funnest thing for me to do, is to share stories of my experience that I hope that would encourage talent professionals to really see this as the career that they want to become. This was not an opportunity. When I was, in college, no one said, "Hey, I think you could be a great recruiting professional." There was not, that was not even an option. And one of the things I'd like to be able to leave this industry is to leave this industry with the notion that a profession in talent acquisition is not only worthy, but it's one that's so fulfilling that it inspire future generations to want to come into our world.
This is great. This is a great way to wrap it up. So, Richard, thank you so much for taking the time. And, you did a great job. I think these kind of conversations are so important, because people who are looking for a job, thinking about a job, people who want to go into recruiting, people recruit, it kind of, opens up to say, oh, this is what's going on. This is how it works. This is how, and by doing more of this, it's going to make it better for people, because then they understand how this all comes together. And you were perfect in kind of walking everybody through this. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. And for the website, in addition to yourself, if they want to check a look at Jem itself, what's the exact website address? So this way people could kind of check out everything.
Yeah, thank you. It's www.jem.com.
Perfect.
It's pretty
Nice and easy.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And you know what? If you want to, as I mentioned before the show, I think I want to start doing more of these with recruiters, because it's really interesting. It's fun to share stories. And I think it's also enlightening for people to know what's the real deal. And I think it more personalizes. So the more they see like recruiters talking, they're like, oh, all right. They are kind of normal. They are, I get it. They're, they have our best interests. So it's like anything else. By having conversations, you can really understand people better. And you may come in with preconceived notions, but then when you get to know people, like, oh, all right, I understand. So this was really eye-opening. So thank you very much. I really super appreciate your time, my friend.
Well, thank you for
Excellent.
having me. All right.
Excellent.
Chat soon.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.